For the 27th Sunday in Ordinary Time, there's some really interesting insights into the scripture readings. You know, for one, you have a lot of parables and stories of vineyards from the first reading into the Psalm, into the Gospel reading. But just to tie them all together, maybe through the Gospel reading, you have this image of the landowner who plants the vineyard and provides everything that's needed for the vineyard to produce a great harvest. And he leases it to tenants and then goes away. And throughout the parable, you have these different categories of people: the tenants, the messengers, more messengers, and eventually the son of the landowner. And it's almost an allegory, even beyond a parable. It almost is very specific in who these parties refer to. So one, God himself and the landowner. The tenants would be, the leaders of the Jewish people. And then you've got the messengers, those are the prophets. And then eventually the son of the landowner is Jesus. And if you play the thing out, the way he tells the story, the way Jesus tells the story, it really mirrors the tradition of the Jewish people in God calling them to himself, granting them this place to bear fruit in the promised land, and the prophets coming to call them to bring the fruit of their labor, their ministry to the Lord, them rejecting the Lord's call, and eventually the rejection of Jesus as well. So it's somewhat specific in how it opens up there. But interesting thing, in these past couple of weeks, as Jesus tells a story and asks a question of the leaders who are present there, they keep indicting themselves, like in this case too, they say, well, that landowner is gonna tear them limb from limb, he's gonna punish them severely. And again, they don't recognize maybe that they're talking about themselves, having rejected, the call of God to, another way of relating to him. They're saying God ought to tear us limb from limb too. So, just the call to respond to the invitation of the Lord to bring his harvest to him, in our labors and ministry. The other piece that I have found interesting for a long time is in St. Paul's letter to the Philippians. He says the phrase, "Have no anxiety at all about anything." And it's like, whoa, that's a fascinating statement in a world where it's riddled with anxiety. St. Paul says, "Have none about anything." And a couple of things with that. We can recognize a distinction between a spiritual or a spirit of anxiety and maybe a psychological diagnosis of anxiety. Those can be two different things, but they also go hand in hand. Go further down the reading. What does St. Paul say? He says, think about these good and holy things. I keep bringing this back to the surface in my own preaching. Like we've got to fill our minds with good and holy things and pay attention to that, what God has done for us, what God has promised to us, what God is doing in us. And if our minds are set on those things, we fill our minds with them. And from our mind, it goes down to our spirit. And there's a certain sense of, at least the ordinary, everyday anxieties of life are pushed out by the good thoughts and prayers that we have, right? So there's a whole nother conversation we can have about mental health in terms of, this reading and how this all plays together. But, if St. Paul said to have no anxiety at all about anything, it has to be possible in some sense. And, Jesus said something similar about not worrying about tomorrow because, today's got enough evil, so just chill, right? And again, we could have another conversation about mental health, but there is something about this that is true and possible and ought to give us hope as long as we follow the instruction of St. Paul to fill our minds with these things that would fill us with peace, the peace that only God can give.